Direct from our newsroom in New York, in color, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather in Miami, Robert Pierpoint in Miami, Del Vaughn in Jackson, Mississippi, Bill Plant in Athens, Ohio, Bill Curtis in Topeka, Kansas, Richard Frelkeld in Cambodia, Murray Fromson in Detroit, and Hal Morgan in Cleveland.
Good evening. The turmoil of the nation's campuses has brought death to 2 more young people. They died and 9 companions were wounded in a burst of police gunfire last night at Jackson State College in Mississippi. Police said the snipers fired first, but students at the predominantly black college deny it. Del Vaughn reports with film by station WJTV.
The gunfire started near midnight outside a women's dormitory. It lasted less than 30 seconds. There was no clear explanation for the shootings or the 2 nights of rock throwing that preceded them. Students say only they were confused and tension had built up over the draft, the war, and violence on other campuses.
This tragedy leaves us all with feelings of sincere grief and sorrow. It has occurred in spite of my most sincere belief that it would never happen in our city. It has occurred despite an honest effort to prevent its happening. I was wrong in thinking that it couldn't happen. I hope that we may all benefit from this lesson and that it will never occur again. This does not remove the heartaches and scars that confront us at this time. This is the darkest day of my life.
The college is closed and some students are leaving. President John Peoples promised without explanation the deaths would be avenged. Del Vaughn, CBS News, Jackson.
Another school closing down today was Ohio University in Athens. Authorities acted after persisting student disorders. Bill Plant reports.
Police fired scores of pepper gas grenades into a crowd of 2,000 Ohio University students last night. It was the second night of confrontation. This had been the only large school in the state to remain open following the tragedy at Kent State, and everyone was on edge. Police attacked last night after the crowd refused to disperse. A much smaller number of students, perhaps 100, hurled bricks and bottles, taunting police and breaking windows. More than 25 were injured, none seriously. There were more than 30 arrests. Though the stinging gas had driven almost everyone from the street by early morning, the decision was made to call in the National Guard and to close the school.
Well, we tried hard, but we had to try in a responsible way, and it had always been my feeling that if we ran to a point where lives were endangered, that we would have to close. It was my feeling after 2 nights of frenzied activity, rioting I think is by no means too strong a word, that the danger to life was increasing hour by hour. Moreover, we felt there was no point in staying open if we could not maintain an academic atmosphere. I think we clearly lost that last night.
National Guardsmen who lined the streets this morning had little to do but watch the students pack up to go home. And most of those students resented the closing of the school.
In Lansing, Michigan yesterday, 12,000 Michigan State University students marched on the state capitol, demanding the legislature do something to halt the war in Southeast Asia. The march started peacefully enough, but about a third of the way from the campus to the capitol, a car plunged into the massed students. It took only shocked seconds for the students to react as the car continued to plow along. And then, enraged, the marchers forced the car to a halt, beating on it with their fists and kicking it. They broke the windshield in an attempt to get at the driver. 2 policemen got to the driver before the crowd could, and in spite of angry reaction, they were able to shield him. 10 students and 1 policeman were injured, 1 student hospitalized. Police charged the driver, 53-year-old William Bennett, a carpenter, with driving under the influence of alcohol and felonious driving. He was released in bail today after being held in a jail police did not identify for fear of disorders. Kent State University, the catalyst of this current wave of student unrest, has been closed since 4 students were shot to death. Authorities invited reporters back to the campus today to see material found in student rooms. Hal Morgan of WJW-TV reports.
An Ohio County prosecutor displayed for the news media the items that were turned up in a 7-day search of 31 Kent State dormitories. 3 tables full of guns, knives, drugs, and other material, including chains, slingshots, and even live marijuana. Some of the guns were air pistols, and many of the knives appear to be souvenirs and hunting knives. Prosecutor Ronald Kane said, "You will see for yourself that most of these items have nothing to do with higher education. Some of the items are lethal weapons, and we hope to obtain a court injunction ordering their confiscation." Kane said that an investigation was proceeding which would determine whether any charges would be filed. However, most of the rooms, he said, were used by a number of students as well as non-students, so it would be difficult to determine which items were used by which students. It was determined that about half the paraphernalia was taken from women's as well as men's dorms. Hal Morgan, CBS News, Cleveland.
The slowest ketchup in the West. East, North, and South.
The latest count of the campuses shows a dozen colleges and universities officially closed. There are strikes at 282 more, most of them non-violent, in some cases thanks to valiant efforts by moderate student leaders. The vast majority of the nation's campuses are open, trying to go about the business of education in these closing weeks of the school year. Bill Curtis reports from Topeka, Kansas, on a rally at one of those schools.
It was another student rally on just another college campus, but with a difference. These sons and daughters of Middle America came to Washburn University in Topeka not to strike or confront authority, but to protest the violent protesters and thank the people of Kansas for providing them with a college education.
I appreciate the privilege of going to college. And I appreciate the right to obtain a constructive education rather than a destructive one. We've been very fortunate at Washburn to have no violence, and I'm thankful for that. As I said, my purpose in being here is so that I can use all these tools that are available on this campus. The library, talking with people, going to class, visiting with professors, taking part in a rally like this. All these things, for me, and this is just my own personal view on the subject, for me, so I can train myself and be trained to better serve God and my fellow man when I become an adult. That's my purpose for being here. I'm sure that other people have other reasons for going to college. The point I want to make is that these other people, whatever their reasons may be, should not be deprived of their education, and I don't want to be deprived of mine through violent disruption and a destructive education.
Refuse to accept the doctrine that students should be seen and not heard. We have attempted to make our views known to college administrators and faculty across the nation. We have attempted to make our views known to elected officials at all levels of government. We have attempted to make our views known to you, the members of the community. Often this is difficult to do. How then do we make our views known? The answer is simple. By the process upon which this nation was founded and upon which this nation has thrived, the right to peaceful dissent.
The rally lasted an hour, and most of the 3,000 people who listened seemed to agree with the speakers that dissent is fine as long as it does not turn violent, and that colleges are not for burning. Bill Curtis, CBS News, Topeka, Kansas.
When you got Kent, you got taste. It comes full-bodied through a filter that means smooth smoking, king size or 100s.
What a good time,
What a wonderful day for a picnic.
Yeah, my stomach is feeling a little funny.
Look at that sky. Isn't it just beautiful?
Yeah, it sure is beautiful.
How about a nice tuna sandwich?
Oh, honey, my stomach...
Oh, here. Try some Tums.
When your stomach's not right, nothing's right. That's why we made Tums. It has one of the most effective medicines known for neutralizing stomach acid. Tums. It'll make your stomach feel better. Now.
The Senate continued debate today on the amendment by Senators Cooper and Church to cut off funds for U.S. military operations in Cambodia after July 1st. That's when President Nixon says they'd end anyway. Today, Senator Stennis said July 1st was just an estimate and unexpected circumstances might require a delay in withdrawal. In other words, Senator Fulbright rejoined, the president did not mean what he said about that withdrawal date. Republican leader Hugh Scott says the fate of the amendment rests with 12 to 15 undecided senators. Behind the scenes, Scott is trying to arrange a compromise.
But I think the Senate wants an opportunity to say something about the Cambodian enterprise. But what's holding us up, what is polarizing people in the Senate and in the country, I'm afraid, is the feeling on the one hand that there must be an outright condemnation of whatever the administration is doing in Southeast Asia, and on the other hand that there must be an outright approval of whatever he's doing. An insistence that there be a turnaround in the middle of a military operation which is proceeding successfully is causing this division, and I regret it very much. I think we ought to adopt a kind of resolution which would affirm that the President has certain clear responsibilities as Commander-in-Chief, that the Senate at the same time is reserving its responsibilities and wants to be heard in making it clear that after this present episode in Cambodia is over, there will be no operations in the aid of the Cambodian government.
But in Florida, the president is adamantly opposed to the amendment in any form. Dan Rather reports.
This proposed legislation cutting off funds for future military actions in Cambodia is, according to the White House, unconstitutional, unnecessary, and dangerous. Unconstitutional because Article 2 of the Constitution gives the President wide powers to protect American troops in the field. Unnecessary because President Nixon already has promised to have all U.S. troops out of Cambodia no later than the end of June. Dangerous because it could harm President Nixon's credibility abroad, and because it helps the enemy by removing unpredictability as one of the President's tactical weapons. Also, because it closes options the President may need if the war should take a drastic turn. That is the White House view. In strongly worded language, News Secretary Ronald Ziegler was authorized to say, and I quote, "The Cooper-Church Amendment is unacceptable. There should be no restraints on the President's powers as Commander-in-Chief as stated under the Constitution," unquote, Mr. Ziegler. The President and his aides are increasingly worried that the Cooper-Church Amendment may pass. They now are mounting a campaign for public opinion against it. Dan Rather, CBS News, with the presidential party in Florida.
President Nixon received a warm welcome when he arrived in Florida tonight, a welcome that contained clear overtones of organized political support for his invasion of Cambodia. On landing at Homestead Air Force Base south of Miami, Mr. Nixon and his family were met by several hundred airmen, officers, and their families, many carrying signs advertising strong backing for the president's Vietnam policies. After shaking hands and chatting for some 20 minutes, an obviously pleased president explained to reporters that the people were saying, "We support you. We're behind what you're doing." With so much disagreement in the country, President Nixon added, they indicated they wanted to be heard too. The story was repeated at the Nixon family's private compound on Key Biscayne, where a couple of hundred people greeted the landing of the presidential helicopter. It was the first time the public, or any part of it, had been allowed on the compound. Several carried placards, such as the one signed by the Key Biscayne Women's Republican Club that said, "The silent majority says stay with it, and we're for you and Agnew, too." Robert Pierpoint, CBS News, Miami.
President Nixon has nominated 2 women for promotion to general, the first in U.S. history. They are Colonels Elizabeth Heisington, Director of the Women's Army Corps, and Anna Mae Hayes, Chief of the Army Nurse Corps, each a veteran of 28 years in service. Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall entered Bethesda Naval Hospital today, suffering from what hospital spokesman said was a mild case of pneumonia. The 61-year-old Marshall's condition was described as good. In Chicago, a federal grand jury reported today but issued no indictments after a 5-month investigation of that police raid on Black Panther headquarters. The jury sharply criticized State Attorney Edward Hanrahan's raiding police and said it found no evidence of their claim that Panthers fired first. In fact, the report said, examination of Panther weapons indicate that only 1 shot was fired. The jury also accused police of gathering only half of the available evidence and mishandling some that was gathered. On the other hand, the jury said the refusal of the surviving Panthers to testify precluded any indictment for civil rights violations. The Panthers, the jury added, apparently are more interested in the issue of police persecution than in obtaining justice. The stock market rallied today with the Dow Jones Industrial Average climbing more than 17 points, the biggest single one-day gain since April 1968. Some analysts called that rally mostly technical and professed to be unimpressed. Volume was 14,600,000 shares. The average price per share on the New York Exchange gained 61 cents, on the American Exchange 16 cents.
The first thing she ever wore was on her wrist. Then her mother taught her how practical a wrist could be. Extravagance, she learned all by herself. Now that you've got her, wrist and all, why not get her something practical and extravagant? A Bulova diamond wristwatch, impeccably cut diamonds, and a Bulova watch. Because you like the way she's grown up.
My name is David Humphreys. During my polar exploration in '68, I discovered that the map of Greenland was wrong, 3,000 square miles wrong. I suspect that my predecessors, including Admiral Peary, were led astray by their watches. You see, an error of only 4 seconds can throw you off a mile. My advantage was that I had an Accutron watch. You might say that this is the face that changed the map of Greenland.
The most accurate watch in the world.
The South Vietnamese say their sweep into Cambodia has now cleared communist forces from the entire length of Highway 1 between the capitals of Phnom Penh and Saigon. South Vietnamese armor has halted just east of Phnom Penh with orders not to go inside. Meanwhile, Cambodian sources report communist attacks in the northeastern part of the country, apparently by units retreating from the Allied invasion and seeking an escape route into Laos. Between the Parrot's Beak and Fishhook bridgeheads, U.S. forces are still looking for that elusive communist military headquarters. Richard Threlkeld reports.
This is the operation the Allies are counting on to pay the biggest dividends of all in the current sweep through eastern Cambodia. 5 battalions of American GIs encircling a mere 20 miles of Cambodian jungle. Their target is Cosvin, Central Office, South Vietnam, the enemy's political and military headquarters. The capture of Cosvin and the secret documents, radio equipment, and high-ranking officers that go with it was one of the original reasons President Nixon put forth in announcing this move across the border. So the pressure on these American troops to find this very special headquarters is enormous. The smallest bunkers are carefully searched and destroyed. The villagers here are Cambodian, but they work for the Viet Cong by necessity. A few documents and some weapons were found in this village, so men, women, and even children are detained and questioned. So are the few Viet Cong stragglers who are found. Eventually, they will be taken back to Vietnam for more thorough investigation. The commander of this search battalion, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Welsh, is optimistic.
We're on the edge of it right now. This area we're in right now obviously is a supply depot or a hospital area. Very recently evacuated, probably when we were assaulted about 2 kilometers to the east this morning.
What evidence do you have that it may be that you are close to it?
We're in amongst security elements. Just the way they act, they're not well organized. They're not standing to fight. No main forces right now. It appears to be security-type elements we're running into.
U.S. intelligence officials believe that as many as 5,000 North Vietnamese soldiers may have been trapped in this jungle nutshell by Allied offensives to the north and south. This time, the American command is looking for something a lot bigger than just another enemy weapons cache. The objective is the capture of the home of Hanoi's General Staff, the Vietnam War trophy of all time. Something to embarrass the enemy and something to quench the fires of protest that have accompanied Mr. Nixon's decision to send American troops into Cambodia. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, on the search for Cosvin.
Former Chief Justice Earl Warren addressed a civil rights meeting in New York City today, and he offered a grim view of American society to the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund audience.
We have had many crises in prior years, but none within the memory of living Americans which compares with this one. A number of factors contribute to it: war, inflation, unemployment with resulting poverty, the deterioration of our environment, an atmosphere of repression, and a divisiveness in our society to a degree of intensity that has not been equaled in the past 100 years. Our nation stands at a crossroads. As we face the future, we must make a choice on which we will travel. One leads to that plural society to which we rededicate ourselves whenever we repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. The other road would divide us into segments of discontented people with a divisiveness that leaves no room for the happiness and contentment of the children of any of us in the foreseeable future.
Because of anti-war demonstrations, several military bases across the country have canceled Armed Forces Day programs this weekend. The cancellations affected such major installations as the Great Lakes Naval Training Center, the Quantico Marine Base, Forts Bragg, Benning, Ord, and Meade, and MacDill Air Force Base. Once more today, there were air battles over the Suez Canal and conflicting claims on the result. Israel claims 3 Egyptian jets shot down without any Israeli losses, and Egypt claims 1 Israeli jet with no Egyptian losses. The International Olympic Committee has expelled South Africa from the Olympic Games because of its policies on racial segregation. France announces it has begun a new series of above-ground nuclear tests over an atoll in the South Pacific. Today's explosion was an atomic device of low yield, but there may be as many as 8 blasts in this series, including an H-bomb with the force of 2 million tons of TNT.
Gravy, dirt. Laundry should be pre-soaked, Sheila, but there isn't always time in home ec class.
Answer, Punch detergent. It puts the enzyme power of pre-soaks and active water conditioners right in your washer. Watch, we've stitched around stains and dirt. Let's wash in Punch. Now, remove the stitching.
Groovy, it's clean. The whole wash is.
Listen to Sheila. When you can't always pre-soak, Punch.
Excuse me, ma'am. Why the tracksuit?
You kidding? Between housework, kids, and shopping, I put in 5 miles a day.
And your deodorant?
That's our after-hour double dry, the long-distance deodorant. Got a special formula that helps stop wetness and odor mile after mile. It won't walk out before the day is over.
Hour after hour, the long-distance deodorant. Double dry or regular?
Members of the Teamsters Union in San Francisco went on a wildcat strike today, determined, as one of their spokesmen said, to shut down the whole town. The action today halted most truck service, stopped buses from leaving the city, and prevented distribution of both major newspapers. The Teamsters walked out to protest the dismissal of hundreds of Teamsters in Los Angeles following a wildcat strike there. Some workers took the day off, closing down factories of the nation's largest industry today. In most auto factories, there was a 3-minute pause for the funeral of Walter Reuther, president of the United Auto Workers, who was killed in a plane crash Saturday. Murray Fromson reports from Detroit.
It was 10 a.m. in Detroit. On assembly lines here and across the country, a work stoppage was called, not by Walter Reuther, but for him. The men he had led for a quarter of a century paused to say farewell. At Ford Auditorium, the mourners wept. You didn't need a union card to be one of Walter Reuther's constituents, said a friend, and his friends were endless. Hubert Humphrey, Edward Kennedy, George McGovern, Ralph Abernathy, John Lindsay, George Romney, and Henry Ford. After the eulogies, an auto workers official sang one of Reuther's favorite labor songs, The Ballad of Joe Hill.
I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he. And standing there as big as life and smiling with his eyes, Joe says what they forgot to kill went on to organize, went on to organize. Joe Hill ain't dead, he says to me. Joe Hill ain't never died. Where working men are out on strike, Joe Hill is at their side. Joe Hill is at their side.
Said John Gardner, by producing Reuther, this society justified itself. Murray Fromson, CBS News, Detroit.
And that's the way it is, Friday, May 15th, 1970. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
If you ever suffer from acid indigestion, this little tablet contains one of the most effective medicines ever discovered for it. In tests at a famous college, it proved to neutralize excess acid in a matter of seconds. Prepared for a little shock, it's Tums, now in 5 flavors. It'll make your stomach feel better now.
What a good time for a cat. What a good time. The good taste of Kent was meant for a day like today.
When you got Kent, you got it made. It comes full-bodied through a filter that means smooth smoking, king size or 100.
What a good time for a cat.
Direct from our newsroom in New York, in color, this has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.